You'll know if Metal Eden is a buy, wait, or skip within the next 42 seconds. Here's your TLDR. Movement this clean forgives a lot. The question is, does it forgive enough? Metal Eden is a fast, focused, kinetic FPS. Think Doom by way of Ghost Runner, with a dash of Metroid salted in thanks to a certain roll-up mode. There's pretty environments in a brutalist sci-fi sort of way, short campaign, great gun feel, some wobbly performance, questionable replayability, and a story that won't stick to your ribs. Critic scores are broadly favorable, but not gushing, and the user reviews tell a slightly different story. The length of the campaign and price will split folks. If you crave momentum shooters and you don't check the price per ounce on all your groceries, this slaps. If you want a meaty campaign or New Game Plus, probably wait for a sale or post-launch patches. If all you wanted was that TLDR, cool, thanks for watching. Before you head out though, hit the buttons and drop a comment if you would. That tells the algorithm that this is actually a useful video and will point more people towards it. Because let's be real, nobody likes minutes of rambling before getting to the actual point of a video. You hate it, I hate it, let's not do that. If you want a more detailed breakdown, stick around. Oh, and if you're new here, hi, I'm Squid, and the rule here is maximum meaningful info with minimal reaction phases. Metal Eden, developed by Raycon, published by Deep Silver, launched on September 2nd, 2025 on PC, on Steam, your PlayStations and your Xboxes, and at launch there's a 10% intro discount on PC. Sorry, console folks. So let's kick things off with the core gameplay loop. This game worships momentum. You're chaining dashes into wall runs, into grapples, into jetpack hop dodgy things, and weapon swapping inside compact arenas as you progress through a linear campaign. If you want the Coke Zero version of Doom Eternal, meaning without any of the exploration and secret hunting, you're in luck. The combat rhythm comes from two simple pressures. First, you have the core economy. Most enemies in-game have a digitized consciousness held in a physical core. It's weird, sure, I get it. Think of it like a soul thumb drive. Asuka can yoink these out of unarmored enemies faster than you can click safely remove hardware, and then either yeet it at other baddies for an ammo refill and explosions that are admittedly a bit underwhelming until upgraded, or drink it for health refill and a charged punch. That micro choice keeps you proactive instead of kiting. Second bit of the loop here is armor on enemies. Many foes have an additional armor bar that shrugs off bullets and impact and protects them from the aforementioned core ripping until you break it. Thankfully, you have several options to deal with this. Energy weapons, explosive canisters, a post-core snack-empowered melee, or late-game weapons that just heap sheer piles of numbers on bad guys. Demolish your foes with math. Bouncing between the right tool for the right job while pretending you're a more homicidal version of Faith from Mirror's Edge keeps things punchy. Hey, you into this kind of breakdown so far? You know what to do. As I said in my video talking about the demo, the combat arenas can start to feel a bit samey and roguelite-ish, but without the replayability that's inherent to that other genre. How much this bothers you is a personal thing. It did start to wear on me after a while. There is a meaningful upgrade and progression system for the campaign, and it is pretty spicy. You're not just earning plus 5% damage. You're unlocking alternate firing modes for weapons, things like homing missiles for the pistol, plasma bombs, and other gloriously absurd methods of destruction. For character upgrades, you've got things like wider core blasts, double-charged punches, hover and max pain modes, and AoE freezing explosions. These are mostly well-paced throughout the game, and do keep the power fantasy flowing without becoming particularly overwhelming for the player. Alright, so what about the parts that aren't shooting, yeah? There's 8 linear missions, most ranging in the 18 to 30 minute mark depending on how you do, each with a clean combat box, intertraversal beat into a set piece, all set on loop. There's minimal backtracking, light secrets, mostly in the form of one-ups. Enemy palette is readable, think snipers, divers, shield bruisers, elementals, etc., your standard fare. The fun is in blending traversal lines while prioritizing targets. If you like reading an arena at speed, planning wall runs to break sightlines, grappling to high ground or to nab power-ups, and dropping in with a charged punch to pop armor bars, it rewards that brain space with a satisfying loop like no other. Now, your experience and enjoyment of the combat will likely reflect the arena you're in for that fight, and some of the difficulty spikes come from areas which lean a bit claustrophobic, which limit your mobility. Yeah, it's tactically prudent on the bad guys' parts, but it's less than fun on yours. It does stumble a bit at times with pacing, where arenas will lock you in until you've cleared an arbitrary number of waves of enemies, and the Ramball sections, which we'll talk about in a second, while nifty, do feel a bit dissonant from the entire package. The cliff notes here about the Ramball is that there's sections of the game where you can morph into a high-speed orb with its own toolkit, ram, read as, bonk into the thing, an electric blast, homing missiles. It's a pacing change. Amusing as a whole, borderline OP in some open spaces, it's fine. I think some people will really like the experiment. Others will feel like it interrupts your flow. Now, it does show up pretty sparingly, so it doesn't rise to the level of the mech or the dragon in Doom the Dark Ages if you're in that latter group. So talking about performance and settings, here's the bit I was the most vocal about in my early impressions video from the demo, which is up there. Back then, there was significant traversal and asset load stutter, among other problems, on the PC implementation of that build. Here's the shakedown for how things turned out on release day. On console, it seems mostly solid, but there didn't seem to be consensus online about console performance. Some people say it runs great on the base PS5, others have said it was a stuttery slideshow mess that crashed a bunch on the Pro. Now, I can't verify these firsthand because I played on PC, so I'd suggest checking the demo first to see how it runs on your specific hardware, and regardless of whether or not you pick this up, maybe put your PS5 on its side instead of vertical, so you're less likely to develop hotspots due to the liquid metal cooling, and then you're also less likely to thermal throttle yourself down to 386 levels. Food for thought. So on PC, they were targeting 1440p 60 on 3080 class hardware. Now, I ran this on my machine at 1440p on ultra everything except motion blur and lumen and ray tracing, because the former is a blight on the industry and the latter doesn't make it pretty enough to warrant the frame cost in my opinion. Now, my rig is down in the description there, so you can compare and contrast that with your hardware and get a pretty reasonable ballpark if you don't feel like installing the demo. My entire playthrough kept frame rates in the 70 to 141 Hz range without frame gen, DLSS was set to quality, and G-Sync is on. I'm very happy to say that they seem to have addressed a majority of the stutter I called out last time. The traversal stutter is still present, but to a significantly reduced intensity, and asset loading stutter seems effectively gone. Nice job, y'all. Well done. Gold star. Now, frame pacing did have some notable variation at times, but hung out mostly in the 8 to 12 millisecond range with occasional deviations that were noticeable, but not a deal breaker. Honestly, I might not have noticed, but for the performance overlay, I kept running the entire time, spiking up. If you're sensitive to those kinds of things, do the standard stuff, cap your FPS to a clean divisor of your refresh rate, trim things like global illumination and ray tracing, and then start turning things down from there if you need to. Now for the stuff that'll really split the room. When we talk about length and replayability here, expect, I would say, probably 4 to 6 hours to roll credits on normal. For my playthrough, I play through all of the games that I review on the channel on normal, just because I figure that's the way most people are going to experience it. My playthrough was just shy of 4 hours, at least if Steam is to be believed here. Here's the thing, though. I didn't die once. So if you're an FPS veteran, or at least moderately skilled, I would suggest playing on the higher difficulties to get some semblance of a challenge. Overall, there's a very tight pace with little filler, but it ends quick. Now, the alternative here is a campaign that meanders and has obvious filler content, so I would much rather have a focused experience than one trying to pad for word count like a college freshman with a hangover. Still, negligible replayability value due to lack of New Game Plus or challenge modes at the time of this record is a mark against it. Now, what winds up getting patched in after the fact here, or gets sold as DLC, we'll see. But we can't judge a game on what might happen to it later. Now, as to the writing and voiceovers, the world building tends to look cooler than it reads. The VO treatment and mix can be uneven at times, with some of the things the characters are saying fading into the overall carnage you're inflicting upon random crunchy number 84. Some people could argue that adds to immersion and realism. Other people would be like, wait, what did they just say? Now, the Steam page does note the use of abominable intelligence for VO. So be aware of that going in if you're on the Inquisition side of that debate. Heretic. Now, as we already talked about the performance here, it does vary by the user. Try the demo first. It costs you nothing but time and bandwidth and hard drive space. There's no real way around that beyond the refund window if you're playing on PC. There does remain the design outlier that is the Ramball. These segments, I imagine, are going to divide opinion. The people who see it as a quirky, fun power trip versus a flow breaker. That's a matter of personal taste there. All right, moving on to art, audio, story, and vibes. It's UE5, so it's shiny. Bold colored lighting on brutalist sci-fi megastructures. I'm a fan. Sound effects are punchy. Soundtrack tends towards electronic thump that builds to match the pacing and story beats. There weren't really any standout tracks that had me looking for the soundtrack as a whole to add to a playlist, but it did the job of adding to the vibe effectively. Overall, it's stylish and readable at speed, which is exactly what a movement shooter needs, even if the aesthetic beats aren't wildly original. The story is competent, if a bit predictable from the get-go, but let's be honest. Do you really care why you're bouncing around like a cod kitty with a jetpack? Or do you want to chain a grapple into a slow-mo wall run while popping robotic skulls? Yeah, I thought so. All right, $40 or your regional equivalent. Is it worth it? So with the release price of $40 with a launch week 10% off discount, add between 4 and 6 hours for your first playthrough, you're paying $6 to $10 per hour of entertainment. This makes the Burrito Index quite skewed and spendy. Is it fun? Sure. Is it more enjoyable than 3.6 burritos? I don't know. I do like my burritos. Now, if your meter of value is feel per minute and skill expression, it's a strong full price buy. If your meter is varying modes, New Game Plus, challenges, and staying power, this is a classic wishlist and wait. What Metal Eden does is it nails the never stop moving fantasy. Crunchy weapons, great traversal, smart little resource loops. It's also brief, a bit uneven in performance depending on your platform, and its story won't linger. As a whole, I'm positive on it, with the asterisk that you should know what you're buying before signing up. And that's a sleek sprint, not a season. To recap, it's a buy now if you actively want a concentrated high-ceiling movement shooter this week. It's a wait for sales if you need campaign length or New Game Plus or replayability to justify a price. And it's a skip if narrative and thick world building is your main draw. So if you want more reviews like this, no fluff, all signal, hit the YouTube buttons. It helps people dodge the rage bait and get content that's hopefully useful. While you do that, there's a video on screen, probably right over there, that YouTube thinks you'll probably also like. I've been Bald Squid. I'll see you next time. On to art, audio, studio.